Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I am John Webb, along with Krish Krishnamurthy,
Dave
Dave
Rice.
Rice, Dan Iverson, and the four of us make up the board of directors of the Ivan NMR Users Group that we started back in 2016, I think it was.
That's right.
Anyways, we are here at ENC 2024. We are in Oak Shelter on the Asilomar Conference Grounds campus, located, as most of you know, on the beautiful Monterey, California peninsula. It's a bright, sunny afternoon, and we decided that we're going to do an Ivan Fireside Chat. And hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun today, and we'll start and a couple of minutes on each other's backgrounds and sort of how we got into this whole Ivan thing and how our little experiment that we've called it since 2016 seems to have panned out pretty well at this point. But Dan, could you give us a couple of minutes on your background?
Yeah, so I actually started out as a sort of a computational chemist. Did a little bit of NMR on the side. Eventually I moved myself to Stanford, and from there I joined Varian actually in 1984, I think, something like that, in the software department. And I basically stayed in the software department at Varian for the rest of my career, which ended abruptly at one point. I was the manager for most of the time there. And it's been a great ride. So I still do software, and plus now Ivan. So there we go.
How about you, Dave? What's your story with all this?
Well, I started out doing solid-state NMR for my graduate work and my postdoc, and I was out in Boston for my postdoc. And I eventually started at the University of Massachusetts and worked there for a number of years. But then I was lured out to California to work for Varian, actually by Evan Williams, who was the applications manager. So for many years, I did solids applications at Varian until that all ended. And
Very unfortunately.
yeah, that's right.
Krish, how about you?
Okay, something that a lot of people don't know is I'm not an NMR spectroscopist by training. I did my PhD in synthetic organic chemistry, so I used NMR to study my structures. That's how I started, and somehow I got interested in NMR when I postdoced in physical organic chemistry with George Ola. The first day he met me, he showed me an XL200. I think that was serial number 5 or 6, something like that came out of Varian. And he said, you come to work with me, it's yours. You can do what you want. Then that changed my path. I said, that's what I want to do. And I was dangerous as a synthetic organic chemist in front of everyone. So I decided keyboard and mouse are a lot more safer than a fume hood. So that's how I started. Then I went to Berkeley as a research associate in pesticide chemistry and toxicology group, and that's when I moved from there. That's when I started working on pulse sequences and all that. Then I moved to Varian, and I have this unique experience of working for Varian 3 times. I left Varian twice, or 3 times now. So I joined the East Coast lab in New Jersey for Varian back in 1989. Then I left Varian, came to Gilead Sciences. Then I joined Varian again in 96 in the app lab. I took over the app lab at that time from Evan. Then I left again to Lilly. I was at Lilly for several years. Came back to Agilent when Agilent took over until we all decided to leave Agilent. That's my background.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So I had actually a similar introduction to NMR. I was doing an intern at Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and they had an XL100, and they said, here, you can play with it. At the time, they were putting a Nicolet computer system on this XL100, so I got to watch the installer hook up the
you know,
computer thing, and that's where
we're very distinctly showing our ages by
Well, yeah.
throwing this stuff out. But anyways, we've got some very good diversity amongst each other. As for me, I started in this business back in 1978 as a tool bag carrying engineer for our good friends at Brooker, and went through that as for a number of years. I specialized in literally anything and everything to do with the hardware, consoles, magnets, probes, you name it. And I'll tell you, learning back then was trial by fire, because there wasn't much training, at least from my former employer. I'm sure it's much different at this point. But then back in 1985, 1986, I'm co-founder of MR Resources and as well as Q1 Instruments. And my very good, dearly departed friend, Bob Crosby, who we were co-workers at Brooker back through late 70s into the 80s, occasionally during evenings over a couple of beers or so, well, maybe more than a couple of beers, I'm not quite sure. But, you know, we just sort of would banter back and forth about possibility of starting our own company. One thing led to another, and in 1986, we were off to the races, and well, we're still here, going on to, well, almost 39 years. But as Dave, Dan, and Chris indicate, the tossing out to the wolves of Varian by our good friends at Agilent in October 2014, I think, really started us all thinking about, well, you know, what the heck are we going to do with ourselves, especially the former Varian guys here. And, well, I think, Dave, I think things kind of kicked off between you and and I think this was our first introduction to each other back sort of 2015, 2016. I think you had reached out to me, or, well, you tell some
Right, yeah.
this story.
So I like to think that I saw the handwriting on the wall, but really it was, I went to work at Stanford with Professor Lynette Cegelski and had 3 great years actually there doing solids NMR in her group. And but at one point, she had a VNMRS and a DD2, and and I took care of them as well as doing some research. And we had a power supply problem, and then so that I had to troubleshoot. And at one point, I called up John to see if he could fix the NMRS power supplies. And of course, you know, Lynette and I agreed myself, you know, if we can fix it ourselves, that's always better. But that's probably not something to say.
And I think that was sort of around the time frame, that's sort of 2015.
2015, yeah.
And this is when MR Resources really developed an awful lot of ambition to, well, now we've got the remnants of, the smoldering remnants of Varian sitting there. And this is when MR Resources really became quite ambitious about looking at this potentially very large piece of business. And, you know, maybe, you know, doing whatever we can to help out the Varian community, you know, certainly from, you know, mainly a hardware perspective, and that maybe is sort of the beginning of things that you're mentioning.
Right, yeah. I got to know you, and also I remember you speaking up at the chapel, one E&C here in Asilomar, about, and sort of challenging all of us to you know, to move on from
And
the
that
loss
may
of
have been
Varian.
April, more or less, 2016. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What happened after my stint with Lynette ended, I got a job running the NMR facility at the University of California, Merced, and which is not too far from San Jose, and I've been doing that ever since. Actually, far longer than I thought I would ever do it. But it's a very nice job, and and Merced is a very nice place to live. My office has a view of the Sierras, at least when it's not not cloudy days. But anyway, go ahead.
And somehow you and I connected further from that point.
Right.
And I don't know if it was you that reached out to me or vice versa, but I ended up a short time after that contact visiting you for the first time in Merced. I don't know if we had met personally before. I'm sure we've seen each other along the way over the years. But I ended up visiting you at UC Merced, and you gave me a very nice tour of the lab and this and that. And but I think ostensibly my visit was for Dave and I to kind of brainstorm a little bit on, what can we do with these smoldering remnants of, or about to become smoldering remnants of the old variant, and what can we do to sort of help out the variant community.
Yeah. As I understood it, I sort of had an inkling, but at one point you told me that something that you had wanted to do was to found a conference organization, a user group, and based on to serve the variant Agilent people. And when you said that, I thought immediately, I'm going to call Krish and Dan.
Yep.
And I did that the next
you
day.
You roped the two of them right in.
Right. Yes. And then the three of us got together, and you set that up for us.
Yeah, that's the first time when we all four of us met in
San Jose.
Fairmont
Hotel.
Fairmont Hotel
at San Jose.
Downtown San Jose.
San Jose. Yeah, as soon as I heard from Dave about John is trying to organize a meeting for all of us, I jumped into that idea. I had experience with supporting Variant community, even when I was not part of Variant during the 10 years at Lilly. I always did this, and I always wanted to be part of this education process, which I call it. Somehow make information available to everyone, and that has been my passion. And as soon as Dave said, I'm in, I want to find out what we can do.
and Dan, of course, agreed to jump right into the mix as well.
Yeah, so you guys did the hardware mainly, and I actually stayed at Agilent until 2016. They shut down the business at 2014, and at that point they eliminated, I think, 90% of the NMR group. And I was in what was called the lights out team. We were supposed to
remember that.
turn off,
That.
shut down the business and, take care of the few remaining customers they had. But during that time, what I did was I took all of the Variant software and put it into open source so that we could, in addition to supporting them from a hardware point of view, have some software that they can continue to use and sort of support the Variant people with the software point of view. So
I think that was one of the brilliant moves
Yep.
the light out team did when they left, when they finished their job in that 2 years, right? I mean, VNMR is so rich of tools that so many customers are used to, and putting that in open source just made a big difference, in my opinion.
And that's sort of where Open VNMRJ came about.
that's exactly where it came about, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually had to do a project. Agilent's very project-oriented, so I had to write a proposal. How long is it going to take? And they gave me, I told them it's going to take me, I think, 18 months or something. So, and right at the end of that, okay, you're done, and I was out the door like the next day.
But in any case, it was very clear to the four of us that we all had I'll say a very keen desire to do whatever we possibly could as individuals and as a group to help support the Varian orphans, I guess, as they became affectionately known as. And so anyway, so we met for the first time with the four of us at the Fairmont Hotel in downtown San Jose.
That's the first time I met you, actually,
I
in
think
person.
so.
That's the
I think
first time
so.
in person I met you.
And that would have been sort of, late summer of 2016, I'm recalling?
June, July of 2000.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Okay. And what we
That was a
did,
meeting.
and what we did is we just we set up a small conference room at the Fairmont Hotel, and we locked ourselves in there for the day. Had a little lunch served, and I mean we just started with absolutely a clean slate, not having any preconceived notions, and probably not even know what the heck we were doing at that point
Right.
with,
Yeah.
with all this. And I mean, as these things are possibly known to come together with meetings and groups of this, or formation of meetings and groups of this sort, that first day of brainstorming,
Right.
kind of led to the beginnings of our Ivan group, and
Yeah.
among other things, we kind of kibitz back and forth, in maybe following days and weeks, what are we going to call this?
Oh, yeah.
What fancy acronym can we
Yeah.
can we assign to all of this? And
We didn't actually come up with the Ivan name. Somebody
I
else.
think you did,
I-
Ken.
I
You
I
came up
think
with
Ivan,
that.
Ivan,
Yeah.
I think
original,
I'm the guilty
yeah,
party.
original acronym was you.
I think, and it originally stood for the International Variant Agilent NMR
Yes.
Users Group.
Yes.
And but so I think fast forwarding, what, a couple of years from, maybe a year and a half or so from then, maybe 2 years.
It was longer than that. It was like 3 years
Okay,
later
that could
when
be,
we
but,
switched out and became broader.
Yeah. We decided to transition from, keeping, sort of a closed group, as it were, to, if variant Agilent only, well, let's become more, let's include the NMR worldwide NMR community at large. And but I'm jumping ahead of myself, because after, I think we then maybe met once again at the Fairmont, going to say kind of fall of 2016, and it eventually led to
Well, we had a user
very
meeting.
first.
Yeah.
In
I
the
think
fall
we
of
sort of, in
2016.
some ways, we sort
Yeah.
of looked back at what during the variant was running high when they were doing very well. What was it the customers really liked about variant? And then we came up with this brainstorm that during the very early days of variant user conference, one of the most popular sessions used to be these workshops. And then said, that is the kind of things that we want to arrange around.
Yep.
That's a similar thing about how do we educate people. I think that's how we started. And so we sort of wanted to have a user
Right.
conference
Right.
that's a full-term workshop
Yep,
rather
yep.
than lectures of a science topic. Rather, let's do it as a workshop of how do we educate people.
Right, and I recall as part of that education was to be sort of an ongoing, I guess, tutorial / how can you variant users, do the most on your own to take care of your own equipment, and how can we help out, maybe in the background, and troubleshooting hardware issues, troubleshooting software issues, all of that sort of thing, and again, all with being very determined to, somehow keep the flame going, because by the time Agilent pulled the plug back in 2014, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, there were some 4,000 variant NMR spectrometers running worldwide. I mean, I think it was
Something like that.
Yeah.
fairly.
Actually, maybe a few more than that.
Big, it could be. But some fairly sizable, well, very sizable number of variant NMR spectrometers hanging out there. So the first meeting came about when? But
In
your
October of
recollection.
2016.
October.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it was in the Fairmont Hotel in San Jose.
Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
not connected with any NMR meeting
Yeah,
such
right.
as BNC or anything like that. And I guess we had a good agenda laid out of just trying to be, broadly speaking, trying to be helpful to the NMR community at large, and especially those users of variant NMR spectrometers. Which of you guys has good recollection of what took place during that meeting?
I certainly remember. The one thing that I remember very well about that conference was, I think that's the first one-day-long event. The entire event was recorded.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the first one, as far as I know, not just about Ivan. As far as I know, any major conference, the entire conference being recorded and preserved
Okay.
was that conference. I was very pleased to remember that very much.
I had not thought about that.
Yeah, that was the first one.
I had not thought about that.
And that fits into the goal that we set ourselves in terms of what is the goal of Ivan. right? Goal of education, being able to disseminate information, and these kind of recording these events for future became an important step, and we continue that even today. Yeah, even today. I think that to me that was the most striking first conference.
It definitely
Part
was.
of the first
And
conference.
we had a fair number of people in attendance. What?
Oh, wow.
40 or so
40,
people.
Yeah.
40
Something like that.
somewhere between 40 and 60, depending on how you counted.
And the Bay Area only.
And the Bay
Yeah,
Area
yeah, yeah.
only.
No,
right?
no,
Exactly.
because some people from LA come up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
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 And I think the guy who actually recorded it was Mike Strain from Oregon. Someone
Oh,
he,
okay,
he
okay.
knew,
That's right.
and he brought that guy down to do the recording.
Oh, that's right. It was his friend that had the recording company.
Yeah.
And well, speaking of some of the history, there's our famous Ivan Globe logo in the background. Who was the variant colleague that designed that logo for us?
Can you say?
I don't
recall?
remember.
Mail Hot or something.
Yeah, right.
It's Michelle's husband.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, Michelle was in Gilead or
Yeah.
Genentech? Or
in
Gilead or
Nuremberg.
Genentech?
One of those.
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay. Yeah,
Mail
yeah.
Hot or something.
Right.
Mr.
I had
Wagner,
already
yeah.
gotten one of my probes fixed, and he was running the repair department and for probes. So I knew who he was. I didn't know that he was a friend.
Not just a friend.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true.
And of
And that's
course,
a cool.
over
that's
the
a
years,
very
I gradually
cool logo.
learned.
I think one of the very cool logos that I have seen.
well, I mean, any group worth its salt has
Right.
to have a fancy, cool logo. So
Yeah.
and that logo, of course, or at least part of that logo, shows up on the Ivan Spinning Globe Founders Award
Yeah.
trophy.
Right.
And the globe itself on the top, and then sort of the Ivan nomenclature on the bottom. But that's a conversation for a little bit later on.
Something else I remember about that meeting too is that the food was great.
It was. It was. No one went away hungry.
That's right.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we went through our first meeting, and I think by any measure it was quite a success.
Right,
And just to put us in the direction of sitting here today reviewing all of these things. So that first meeting, what came next?
Well, then we immediately planned for the ENC of 2017.
Was it the 2017 that we did, or
Yeah.
did we skip?
I
a year?
believe we did 2017.
I think you're
but,
right.
you know,
Possible, yeah.
somebody could correct me.
And where
Yeah.
was that held?
Chapel. Didn't we do that in Asilomar in Chapel?
Maybe.
May?
Yeah, because 17 and 19 were Asilomar.
Yeah.
Okay.
17 and 19 were in
Yeah.
Asilomar. No, I know
No,
why.
No.
Oh, we did it at the Marriott
At the
Hotel
Marriott.
in
At the
Exactly.
Marriott.
downtown
yeah,
Monterey.
That's right,
downtown,
downtown.
Had a
yeah.
nice view.
And
I
we
remember
got
that
the
now.
Yeah.
penthouse, and turned out you didn't have to pay extra for it.
That's right.
That's right. It was
Yeah.
in Marriott,
Yeah.
Monterey.
Yeah. We had it in one of their lower floor
Right.
conference rooms.
Right.
And after the day's worth of talks and discussions, we all retreated to the upstairs penthouse, and
Yes.
I remember quite a view, and a little beer and wine, and maybe we had some food and so forth. But so, let's talk about progression of how things kind of went from there, and where we had successive meetings, and maybe how then we transitioned into Ivan as it stands today, which of course we refer now to Ivan as
Well, what is
inspiring a versatile and agile NMR community.
Well, Krish came up with that. and we
What
all
was it,
were
Krish?
laughing about it at
okay.
the
I think
beginning.
so. There was an email somewhere, so I cannot say no. I can't deny that.
Yeah.
I think there's somebody has an email.
I know we had to retain the Ivan
Right,
acronym,
right.
but-
Yeah.
but
We
just-
like the Ivan acronym.
we magically transformed it into something.
I think the
something
way
altogether.
I think the way it transpired into international, inspiring, versatile and agile was when we started in 2017. In the next, we realized as the years progress, and then we did in 2018. I believe it's in Florida. Then we did in 2019 in Chapel, and then 2020 was. As we were progressing, we realized there's a significant interest, not just from variant agile community, but from a bigger NMR
Right.
community. And
Right.
that's the time around 19 or 20. I don't remember 19 or 20, but we decided we are going to invite everybody, not just
Yeah.
Yeah.
variant agent. So we realized that we have to change the name
Right.
from a variant
yeah.
agent to something else.
Yeah.
And this versatile, to be honest, the versatile agile name came about when you started the COVID, after the COVID started, when we did the workshop, when we started the workshop, we wanted to honor the NMR managers, versatile and agile managers.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
That's how it started.
Actually,
That's how I
didn't
came
do
up
that.
with that
Right.
idea.
Oh, okay. That's how you came up with it.
That's how I came up.
I took it as a joke at the beginning,
No.
but then I looked at it and said, "That's perfect. Let's put it on the website."
because it was during that time, as everybody remembers, during that time, I think the pressure was very high on the lab managers how to keep the NMR labs going. And this is how the workshop started, and we can have a discussion on that as well. But that's how it started. That's when this name. I wanted to think about what do I do. Then I just jokingly wrote that. I think
Yeah.
Eric or somebody picked that up and then said, "That's what we are going to go with."
And speaking of names and identity sorts of things, the MR Resources logo, I'll give you a little bit of trivia that I think you guys may or may not remember, but the sort of V shape in the M in the
Yeah.
MR Resources logo, for several years, I don't have my MR Resources shirt on,
Yeah.
but the embroidery work that we would do on the various jackets and shirts that we would give away, that little V, we actually had distinctly highlighted in white for the letter V, and in sort of recognition of what used to be variant. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
that's
okay. I
an
didn't know
interesting
that.
tidbit.
Piece
I
of
didn't know.
trivia.
I didn't know.
I don't think we're doing that anymore,
Yeah.
but a little piece of trivia. So, anyways, we're continuing happily with our various in-person meetings, and mainly based around or sort of tied on to ENC at
ENC,
this
yes.
point. We didn't really do any other kind of dedicated standalone Ivan meetings. Did we do two
Well-
dedicated was it just the
No,
first one?
no. I mean, we did 2017, 2018.
But connected with ENC.
2019
then.
ENC, it
were
was all
regular
connected with
meetings with the
ENC.
ENC.
Yep.
2020 then was the Baltimore meeting, which
Right.
began at the beginning of the COVID
Yep.
epidemic.
Yeah, I think there's
And-
one more thing that was done in between by sponsored by Ivan was
that's right.
in 2018 at Smash. There was a
Oh,
workshop.
yep,
and
yep.
Oh, yeah.
spons- It was sponsored by Ivan.
I remember
as
that,
well,
yeah. I remember
So there was
that.
a workshop on craft. It was a time domain analysis workshop, and Ivan sponsored. That's one of the again yet another thing that Ivan as a group we wanted to be workshop oriented.
Yep,
How
yep.
to educate
Exactly.
people oriented.
And so all of that led up to 2020 ENC, which I think was toward the end of March. I remember it was very, very cold.
Early
and
March.
Yeah.
was it early March?
Yeah,
Ve-
I think this is a date that they shut off everything.
Yeah.
Very cold in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're even through halfway through ENC, and I guess everyone had questions in their mind. Should we all just pack up and go
Yeah,
home?
yeah.
That was
Well, I went
the
home
entire
early.
population
Yeah.
of ENC at that
Yeah,
point.
I-
And
My
but
wife was very upset that I was staying out there.
And but we all we toughed it out and all stayed. I remember getting to Baltimore BWI Airport when we all left, and I think it was kind of generally accepted that everyone was worldwide pretty much was running for cover at that
Yeah.
point. And I remember distinctly going through BWI Airport, very few people in it, and it struck me that this flight taking off just across the hall from our departure gate, it was absolutely jam-packed with people going to Florida. So, go figure.
Wow.
Go. And by the time I got back to Boston Logan Airport that afternoon, the place was empty. The airport was just hardly, a few incoming flights, and that was about it. And well, we all know worldwide what happened from that point. So let's talk a little bit about what happened to Ivan at that point during COVID, and
Well,
We clearly
In
all.
some ways, that's one of the good things that COVID
Yeah,
did
it
for
was a
us.
good thing.
Yeah,
Because-
not for everybody, in the
Yeah,
sense
yeah.
that we now can conduct these in a completely Zoom environment. And these are all was driven by. Up until then, we never thought about online.
It just seemed too difficult. I think
Too
we
difficult.
talked about it,
Yep.
but
Right.
we
Yep.
didn't think anyone would log in.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
And
How,
but
how
I
the heck do
remember
you do this Zoom thing?
I remember at UC Merced, one of the very first things they gave, and I think this happened everywhere at universities, they gave us all Zoom accounts. And I said, what's this Zoom account?
What do we do with this?
And I practiced with it actually, you know, in my house, going from one computer to the other. And of course, we all, in nearly our next meeting, you know, our monthly telephone get-together, we all started talking about how we might use Zoom. And, and you bought an account.
And
From a format point of view, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that struck me that I thought we can somehow incorporate into our ideas was I listened to a Zoom meeting by UCSF team educating people what we should do about COVID. It was more than the subject matter, it was the way they did. They were sat around, doctors sitting around and having a discussion, a panel discussion
Yes.
among themselves, how we should all protect ourselves and all that. And I was watching this, I said, my God, the kind of information exchange that happened, just because these experts are sitting around and talking, that's the one I brought up and I said, hey, we should do something like that in Ivan.
You know,
was
I
it
do.
sort of maybe May or June of
Yeah.
2020?
Well,
June we started.
we started off, we were going to do the workshops on COVID.
Yeah.
Because that
Yes.
was the
Yep, yep,
topic
that's the
of
first
interest,
one.
how NMR facility managers were responding to the COVID crisis.
And what was that?
June, May 6th, 26.
We're getting tutored by
Okay.
our
Right,
our
right.
video
That's
producer,
okay, you can
Eric.
cut it off,
No,
Eric, you
no,
can
we're
talk.
not.
It was May 6th.
Yeah,
May 6th.
that's what I
Ah,
thought.
I see,
That was
okay.
the first one?
Yes.
That was
Okay.
the first one?
That's
Okay.
you know, time flies.
Right.
I thought it would be later than that, but that's
And so that the topic of the first meeting was
Yeah.
how the well, not only the lab manager, but those who needed to be in the lab, how they would or were going to cope with these things.
The first several were COVID related, as
Okay.
I recall.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ken did the first
Ken
one.
was the one who
Yeah.
spearheaded
Right.
that.
That's what I
Ken
can't
Knott.
remember is how we got Ken involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember how we got him involved?
He's
Well,
the
that-
one who
he-
started the
he
first one.
volunteered to do the
He
first one.
spearheaded the
I
first one.
I
Yeah.
remember, Ken,
Right.
Ken Sharp Knott, yeah, exactly. And I don't, maybe the first Zoom meeting, we had, I don't know, 20 people on board with us or
We
something
did the
like
first
that?
one twice. We had the
Okay.
first one as a sort of trial run, and we had about 20 people. But
Yep,
then
yep.
we broadcast the same one the next month,
I see. I
Okay.
forgot.
and then we had about 100 people or more.
Yeah.
I'm looking off to the side
Okay,
here for
so-
advice here.
Second round, 60 maybe, you know, something.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, maybe.
Something like
Yeah.
that, yeah. But so then the progression continued, and we pretty much decided. I think there were maybe a couple of months that went by. We had 2 meetings during 2 or 3 given months,
Yeah.
but then we eventually settled in on let's do this monthly, and
Monthly, yeah.
let's just keep it going. Who can comment on how we ended up choosing whatever various topics and speakers and that sort of thing?
At the beginning, it was a little bit easier because we were just new. So there were a lot of topics available,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So
We-
we sort of,
We had a monthly telephone meeting.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We had a discussion among the
Yeah.
Ivan group, yeah.
And so that's how we planned them each month at the beginning, and we brought people in to discuss. And you went out, you found most of the people that have done workshops over the years.
Yep.
And Krish. And,
Yeah, Krish had been
yeah.
very instrumental in putting those together.
And we would discuss them, and then we would motivate the group leader to do, to get
Yeah,
some people together and do the workshop. And at first we were interested in all the various aspects of running NMR labs, but it quickly became apparent that we needed to do research workshops. And that was really the long-term interest,
Right.
more so than just lab management.
And I don't know that we had any particular motivation on zeroing in on particular topics at that point. I mean, as we progressed, I mean, these things, we tightened things up as it were, and get a little bit more decisive. But I think the earlier days,
We sort of focused on at that time, our current audience was more small molecule people, because lab managers, and so it was all focused upon organic molecules. So we sort of get all our technical discussions focused on small molecule NMR. Then we started to diverge from there, and then talked about metabolomics, and talked about experiments, and talked about technology, and talked about bio-NMR. And now, we have sort of, now there is no boundary. We now do a software training.
Right, we're on to software right now.
So I think we were learning ourselves what makes this interesting and useful for our community. I think we were learning, to be honest, how this is becoming useful, and how can we adjust ourselves to make it more and better. So it wasn't like a aha moment. It was more like a moment. We were realizing that.
I mean, definitely organic growth throughout all of this.
Right.
And not so incidentally, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Krish, we video recorded the very first meeting, but by default, doing these on Zoom, I mean, the whole thing was recorded.
Right.
And I think we've got nearly all of the meetings, obviously a video record of all the Zoom meetings, but I think some of the other live and in-person meetings, we've got some video footage. But the point is that we built, I think, a pretty significant video library on YouTube at this point, accessible through the Ivan website or directly on YouTube. And didn't we decide we had, 63 or 64 videos recently, as of, a month or so ago?
Yeah,
and,
that's probably the correct number.
And some of those videos have had over 1,000 views, and which, not so bad, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I'm not surprised about that, because what used to be, where can I get Ivan workshops, and then we have to send people a link, it has come to a point that, can I see this in Ivan YouTube channel? In other words, people know where the Ivan YouTube channel is. Yeah. People know where MR resources, YouTube channels are, where our workshops exist. So that's that's a positive thing, in the sense that we are becoming, Ivan workshops are becoming more generic, very well known. Where to do we have a topic like this? People actually go to our workshop and then come back with their idea of how. There was recently somebody wanted to do a pulse sequence programming workshop. I said, whoa, that pulse sequence programming is 25 years old for me. Things like that, right? So in other words, they are looking at Ivan as a source of these kind of educational information. I think that's definitely a positive thing that we do.
Oh, sure. And I believe one of the most popular meetings that we had was on the helium crisis.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
What year did we do that?
That was in 2021, I believe.
Okay.
2021.
And that's one of the videos with well over 1,000 viewers on it, and obviously very important topic. But I mean, we've covered an awful lot of very important topics.
That's the time when there was that accident also, wasn't there? Helium, one of the helium.
He showed the explosion.
The explosion in one of the helium
in Russia.
Resource that was an
explosion. Began the second crisis.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But I mean, we've covered an awful lot of very important and very useful topics, and I mean, we're clearly continuing to do that.
Yeah.
I think. Well, I always like to pipe up and say that we're going to keep on doing this, well, as long as we're above ground.
And then,
At least the four of us, but
and then came the live from Asilomar.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was
We
well,
did
that,
the one-
we had to
we-
figure out what to do about the next PNC.
oh yeah, let's talk about that one. And that was ENC 2021.
That's right.
Where their
Where it was
ENC was
entirely
online.
virtual, yes.
But we did have three very brave souls who showed
Well,
up
4, including
at
Lima.
7 o'clock
No,
in the
she's number
morning
3.
on
There's a-
opening day of ENC, I think it was, right out a couple of hundred yards from here, directly on Asilomar Beach. And that would have been Dave, Dan was there, and Lima was there.
Yeah, I wasn't
Oh,
there.
you
I
weren't there.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
was from
Yes.
home. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
come. I don't remember why I didn't come.
You had a
but
bad back.
Well, you and
Yeah,
I
but
both,
I had a correct. I just had my surgery.
well, you and I both stayed in the bunker.
You know, I'm not sure, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I actually thought of the idea of standing around Asilomar during the ENC.
Yeah.
Right.
And actually, it was for a very venal motive. I just wanted an excuse to go to Asilomar.
And of course, I mean, that's where the live from Asilomar, Ivan live from Asilomar surfboard came from.
Wow,
And
yes.
as we put this video together in its final form, we'll put a picture up on the screen for you. But there we were with Dave and Dan out on the beach there, and I think the sun had just come up.
Lima was
And-
taking the sunrise.
Right.
He took a
Yeah,
video
right.
of it.
And we had, there it was
Moon
in all
was
its
setting. It
glory.
was a full moon.
Our Ivan live from Asilomar
Yeah.
surfboard, and which eventually morphed into an Ivan skateboard. We'll put a picture of that up
Yeah.
in the video as well.
Okay.
But, well, I mean, among other things, we've definitely had a lot of fun with it.
That was fun.
And,
Yeah, that was.
That was
But
one of my
we-
favorites. But I think it was actually one of the best attended ones,
Yes.
too.
Exactly.
And of course, that meeting was entirely virtual.
It was.
Except for the interludes where Dan and Lima would walk
Would
around.
tour around the campus.
With a Mac Pro and camera,
Yep,
showing reminding people of where they weren't.
and like I said, literally, you, Dan, and Lima were the only people that attended ENC Live that year.
Yeah,
That's right.
And
That's
right
right.
here at Asilomar, which
Yes, exactly.
I mean, it doesn't get any more cool than that as far as I'm concerned.
And that continued. I mean, we still call this live from Asilomar. right?
We do.
Well, I still refer to it as that when we're at Asilomar.
Yeah. yeah.
But it's become subsumed by the purposes of the meetings now. But
And we, certainly, progressed along the way with our, pretty much every month Zoom meetings online. We're certainly going to continue to proceed with ENC meetings. We're told ENC is going to continue here at Asilomar for the indefinite future. Well, I suppose that remains to be seen.
they're gonna meet
It's
with-
here next year.
yeah, and it's going to be a joint meeting with ISMAR, which will make it very interesting.
Right.
We might want to think about how we program the Saturday meeting to, respond to the broader interests of the two different conferences.
Right.
Another thing that we missed in this discussion was not only after the first live from Asilomar, the next time when we decided to do it actually live from Asilomar, we started doing these Ivan hours.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. They
I
started
think it
the-
was actually we started in Florida, the Florida ENC.
You're
Yes,
right.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we decided we're going to have a 1 hour plenary lecture time, but at the same time, little bit more after dinner type of discussion, and that started kick off. Now that became a standard feature of Ivan from
And
ENC.
we kind of describe the nightly Ivan hours, which
Right.
we're doing it this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Each evening. And I guess we kind of collectively describe the Ivan hour as a fun series of fun/informative series
yeah.
of NMR talks and maybe not so NMR talks.
Yeah.
For example, last year, Ron Crouch did his presentation
Astronomy.
on amateur astronomy. Ron is a prominent amateur astronomist and has some very sophisticated equipment. And anyways, Ron gave a great presentation last year on astronomy. And I know some of the questions during the Q&A period after were, wanting to sort of compare and contrast Ron's astronomical pursuits with how they might compare and contrast, from a technical point of view, how it might compare and contrast to what goes on within the atomic nuclei and all that stuff that we deal with on a regular basis. And there were some interesting comparisons on that, I recall.
Yeah.
And this year we continue with, last night we had Ivan Hour talk on memories of the late and great Ray Freeman.
Yes.
Tonight we're doing something I think is going to be really cool with Matt Augustine from UC Davis.
Right.
On
he's a great speaker. I just listened to him
on Matt's escapades with his now famous wine NMR spectrometer. He took a number of years ago. He took a super wide bore. I think it was only 200, either 100 or 200 megahertz magnet, and in which he partnered up with a very successful and very prominent East Coast wine collector. I mean, this is a resort in New Jersey with, I guess, upwards of 500,000 bottles of some very, very high-end vintage and very expensive wines. And Matt's idea was to basically determine, has this turned to acetic acid and or not? And Matt will tell us more about this tomorrow, but they kind of put the bottle upside down into a rudimentary NMR coil, and very easy to see the vinegar. And, but Matt will tell us more about that tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to bring up one item that we didn't discuss today is about Founders Award.
Yeah.
That's right.
This also started along with our Life from a Silomar idea. I think John brought up about we should have an award to people who serve the community, excellence in serving the community. I think that's where we started with first Ken, and then we now have a team who does the selection. We have nominations.
Well, actually, the four of us were the first four winners.
Talk about self-gratification.
We got very nice globes.
Mere coincidence, I'm sure.
Which I still have turning on the top of my.
We all had a great time patting each other on the shoulder, and telling the world how cool we are. Worked out good, but just this past Sunday, we in fact had our fourth Ivan Founders Award. And we're going to be certainly continuing that, and even it's turned into something quite popular, and I think very valuable recognition for those that have gone above and beyond their sort of daily duties in the NMR world. And let's talk for a second about what is our criteria for the Ivan Award.
I think that again, my philosophy is there is this important function of NMR scientists, not just about doing their research, training their group, and doing their work, but about educating the community, right? And somehow supporting the community. I think that is where one group of people who get left behind in all the major awards is the people who manage the lab, who work for an organization to run the organization, and like this year, having a blog space where people can go to get their questions answered. These things are very valuable contribution to the community, and that doesn't get recognized as much as the scientific contribution. I think that's where Ivan Founders Award, my opinion, Founders Award stands aside from the rest. It's just not about scientific contribution. It's about how did you support the community.
And in the case of this year's award winner, Glenn Facey from University of Ottawa, just retired somewhat recently, but he was the lab manager there for 30 years. And he ran a very, very impressive blog which I don't know if the blog is particularly active these days, but still, from what I'm told, that many NMR-related questions that one would Google, for example, a lot of those answers are going to show up top of the list from
Yeah,
Glenn
yeah,
Facey's blog, and he's got we were told 2.6 million hits over the years on this
That's
blog.
very impressive.
It
That's
certainly
very
is.
impressive. Yeah.
But I mean, these are the things that we as the board of directors and the Ivan Group in general are very keenly pursuing, and we're going to continue to do so. Let's talk a little bit about future of Ivan and what we're all trying to do, and expectations. That any thoughts on that?
Certainly, I think our roundtable workshops are going to go on for a while because they have just the right stuff to be more than a webinar, and worth tuning into once a month.
Mm-hmm. And also, people are actually starting to say, "Oh, I'd like to do one of these."
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, one thing is, and Krish has constantly reminded me of this, is that since he's been doing most of the research for finding group leaders, that we're very much into small molecules and analytical NMR, and we need to get out of that, perhaps into solids NMR.
Yeah.
Bio,
And
not-
into bio NMR. We don't really do that much bioliquids, and a lot's been happening, in the last few years. And that
I
is,
mean, is NMR imaging something that we might
Actually,
gravitate
we are
towards?
going to have an introductory imaging-based spectroscopy by Ariana from University of Memphis. She has agreed to give a workshop probably in August, I suppose. Right now is tentatively in August. So she has already participated in another workshop,
Yeah.
and she's going to lead a workshop. She's more it's not imaging, but image-driven spectroscopy. So we need to expand. I think that is one of our Ivan's future should be. We just don't specifically, just because we were all in this small domain of small molecules, and we have to expand out. NMR is very big, and we can new technologies, fast methodologies. We have to bring in all of that. Another thing that I like to see more is grooming a newer generation of leaders within Ivan, right? We need to bring in a younger generation to take over
young people
and
to
bring in
take it over.
ideas. How do
The
how do
four
we
of
do
us
that?
aren't going to last forever.
Right.
I didn't want to say that.
Yeah. I mean, in a sense, it's it's not a retirement because none of us are retired, but
Not yet.
But I think for ideas, right?
But
they are the newer
we need
generation as
we
well.
need to directly address what the young investigators are looking at, and the young people are going into NMR. I've met a bunch of new people that I didn't know, at this ENC.
Yeah.
We're
And-
definitely going to have to start putting the call out there
Right.
for
Right.
this sort of thing. But what just occurred to me, what's interesting about this part of the discussion is our audience is sort of seeing a quasi-board meeting going on right now,
Yeah.
where we're just
Right,
kind of
that's right.
banging heads together, as they say, and how are we going to take this into the future? And this is not unlike what we did during our very first meeting between the four
Right.
of us at that San Jose Fairmont Hotel. I mean, we just to a large extent, we still very much have a clean slate in
Yeah.
terms of one of the things that comes to mind is that do we want to eventually branch out, maybe some sort of a subset of Ivan, and maybe begin to explore MRI, for example?
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities. out
Well,
there.
we sort of, in some ways, we tried it this year, right? We had a symposium on
Small
benchtop
molecules.
NMR,
Yeah,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
a subset of what was
Right.
NMR itself, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so we are, I think, as I pointed out before, I think Ivan as a group, one of our success reason is, as a group, we try to adapt to what we
Right.
see work best. And so I thought the benchtop NMR symposium was very successful. A lot of people were very interested in this. We brought in people whom typically wouldn't probably come to IVAN meeting, and we brought in. So perhaps what you are saying about branch out into sub is not a bad idea. We can think about in that direction as well.
And we don't necessarily have a carved in stone set agenda with anything we're doing.
I mean, basically, if we're branching out into new areas, we need a person who wants to take advantage of the forum and to use it for their purposes.
And of course, our IVAN Founders Award winners, should they choose to accept the prize, are already forewarned that they'll be put to work for the next 4 years on the award selection committee. And that sort of maybe leads into a bit of the discussion here today on a little bit further out future of IVAN in terms of, well, number one, inviting more and more speakers to come in, inviting ideas on topics to present. And I think eventually, we're not getting any younger, gentlemen. And one of the things that we're realistically going to have to think about at some point is kind of kicking the can down the road. And I mean, I think the four of us would very much agree that once we're all put out to pasture, there is no reason
going
that
out to pasture.
We need the next generation.
There's no reason whatsoever that, in fact, I for one would be very disappointed if IVAN did not perpetuate well into the future. And we need eventually going to need some young blood to come into IVAN, and hopefully have the desire that we've had to keep the thing running.
Yeah, but based upon the past, you brought in about IVAN Founders Award winners, about them participating. Based upon the last three winners that we have seen, their participation is extremely useful.
Oh, right. Yes.
In setting this year's program, right? I mean, all three of them were very much involved in setting our goals and how do we set this particular program for benchtop NMR. So perhaps organically we can bring in newer generation and replace all of us to run the organization.
But a key thing, though, is to bring in people that are enthusiastic, say, about doing a workshop, and just letting them do it the way they want to do it.
Yeah. I think we should just remind the people who their founders were. It was Ken Knott, Deneen
Hayden,
Angwin, and Ron Crouch.
Right. And
then this year we have Glenn Facey.
Just make sure you edit the Deneen properly name. I used her previous last name.
Okay.
So Deneen Angwin has been very, very enthusiastic in participating in
Ken has also.
Ken has been. I mean that.
And Ron too.
Fact,
I mean all of them.
Yeah.
So there it is. There is already an organically growing next level of people,
and it's very clear that we've got an awful lot of fresh faces kicking around ENC.
Another thing that we can think about is even the workshop format. We have been doing panel discussions. There's nothing wrong in also branching out, doing plenary lectures. Have an invited speaker who do a full lecture on a topic.
Yes.
On a topic, and give that person an hour and a half rather than having a panel discussion. Those are the kind of ideas we can brainstorm with the newer generation of participants. So perhaps we can have us as a founding board member, plus we can also have maybe an organizing committee group, which helps us to.
But the most important thing is to just get out there and get people involved and let them use it the way they want to.
And that's what we count on our audience for.
Exactly.
Our worldwide audience. I'll mention that we ask you folks to certainly, I don't want to use the term step up to the plate, but step up to the plate.
It's not step up to the plate. It's basically take advantage of it.
Yeah. We just started something. And make use of it. How do you drive this this organization in the future is really is a community. The community need to drive where it is. We just kick-started something, and we think this is going very well, and the community needs to drive this.
I truly enjoy what we're doing with this here, and I think we all take great satisfaction in the level that we brought all of this to, and here we are. Do we have any final topics or remarks that we might want to add to all this?
I personally want to thank you for bringing this up, John. I mean, I think
thank you, Krish.
When in 2000, as I said, in 2016, when we had our first planning meeting, at that time it wasn't even called Ivan.
Yeah.
And you came up with the idea. That's the first time I met you. And then when I left that meeting, I said, wow, here is an opportunity for us to do something.
It was kind of let's just sit down and have lunch.
Right,
with
it
each
was
other.
right. That's right. But it was good. We needed that kind of a catalyst, and then you played that catalyst in kickstarting our ideas and supporting them.
And that said, and I say this pretty much every at the beginning of every Ivan meeting, that MR Resources and Q1 Instruments are going to continue to support all this. Well, maybe the next best thing than forever, but
Right.
You guys get the idea. Dan, any?
Well, I would
final
just
thoughts?
sort of second what Krish has said. I mean, this wouldn't have started without that first meeting at the Fairmont. And, who knows where the current group of Varian Agilent people would be without this.
Yeah,
so.
it's helped keep all the Varian Agilent people together. That's true.
It was a lot of fun just, sitting there and, again, I'll use the term banging heads together and not absolutely clean slate, not having a clue what we were doing there other than having a lunch together, but worked out pretty good, I think.
I mean, to be honest, we as a group ourselves became versatile and agile.
Okay.
And
Plus we had some fun along the way.
Fun
Right.
along
Yeah.
the
No.
way, exactly.
That's an important part of it. I mean, I've had an excuse for the last 7 years to go to the ENC. I
you
might
go.
not have gone every year if I hadn't been involved with Ivan.
But we're, very quickly going on, 10 years with this. Obviously,
Yeah.
8 years at this point, and
We're at 8
year number
years,
10
right.
will come up very quickly. But one of the things I find quite nice is that we still like each other. We haven't gotten any fistfights yet.
He's going to turn off the camera before we start.
I think that
We could at least arm wrestle.
yeah, right. I think that it's time to turn the camera off.
But I hope that some number of people will watch this little fireside chat that we've done today, and the fire is still going a little bit.
Right.
That's the third fire.
And I want to thank our video producer Eric Schatzline, and we will throw up a clip, a photo of our audio and video production console that Eric has put together based on roughly a 1985 vintage Brooker AC console, which he stripped out completely and added very modern audio and video production equipment to it. And we're just going to keep things going. And, folks, I hope that you've enjoyed our little chat today with us, and that you'll continue to Zoom into our monthly meetings and join us in person wherever possible. And I want to thank the international community for helping out with our Ivan efforts.
Yeah.
And please do stay involved with us.
Yep. Be part of it.
Krish, Dave, Dan, I want to thank you guys.
Okay.
Well, tremendously for all the effort that you've chosen to put in, and I guess we're doing a bit of a service for the NMR community.
Yeah. That's been a good ride so far.
So far.
Fun. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Anything else?
I'm done.
Cut.
Okay. All right.